Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It is a very special Friday. It's the first podcast we're doing during the International Women's Month. And we are welcoming a female new founder, Cullie Poseria. And Cullie is working on getting a new business off the ground. It's called the Bar Nun Life. And it's in a very hot and interesting category, non-alcoholic lifestyle and entertainment space. So welcome, Cullie. And what is on your mind?
Thanks, Elena. Thanks, Jeff and Eric. I'm really excited to be here. And I would say what's really been on my mind recently is taxes, accounting, bookkeeping, kind of all the administrative, not so fun stuff of being a founder. But, when you're a solopreneur, you're figuring it out.
Learning a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So Eric and I have been starting a business. We launched our business in September, and so we are going through those same growing pains. It's quite an interesting, learning experience. Well, so tell us a little bit about how did you sort of decide to do something, in this entrepreneurial space?
Yeah. Well, it was not something I would say. I'm not that person that you read about. Like, I didn't have a lemonade stand when I was a kid. I wasn't taking entrepreneurship classes in school. So it was not something I ever really fully expected myself to do. I had many people tell me, when I was working that, oh, you're very entrepreneurial minded. And I think what happened was I had been working in corporate for, more than 5 years in marketing. I had worked in freelance videography, given my film background. And I unfortunately got laid off at one point. And that just had me thinking, like, what do I want to do next? And a few other things happened at that same time as the layoff. One is I had been volunteering with a nonprofit called Swim Strong Foundation. And another thing is I had quit drinking. And I was just focused on like getting healthy, feeling better. And all of those three things kind of combined to make me think, okay, like, well, what do I want to do next? I want to do something more community oriented. I loved, in the swimming that I felt like every time I'd go give lessons, I was making an impact on a one-to-one basis in person. Whereas I had been working remotely since before the pandemic doing corporate, marketing. And I know that the software we were building impacts thousands of lives, but on a day-to-day, it doesn't really feel like it, and I just thought, okay, what can I do in my local community? And then in terms of the not drinking, I just noticed my health getting better and better and better 3 months, 6 months into it. And then a year went by. And at the same time, I love going out. I live in New York City. I like to go out at night, find fun things to do. And there's just not a lot of sober spaces. And, around the time I had this idea, there was only one non-alcoholic bar in all of New York. And so that's when I said, okay, like, maybe I should like see how I can open something like this. I would personally love to have a place like this. And that's kind of what inspires me. But then every day I meet people that are trying not to drink or they're not drinking, and people that are in, that have similar backgrounds as mine, as like arts, wellness, tech, that are looking for events and things to do at night. And those are kind of the focus areas of events I want to have when I open the bar. So
that is so interesting, Cullie. And the title, talk to us about the title. It is very clever.
It's kind of hard to say where this title came from. I would say the Bar Nun Life. So I actually just dreamed about it. It sounds crazy, but I had the idea in a dream of, like a nun with a martini glass. That's what my, logo is.
That's awesome.
And I tested it, I actually did a number of, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about market research, but I had done a survey, and then I also had done one-on-one research interviews where I basically showed people like a draft concept of the logo and the name and got their feedback. And then I talked to a number of people who are Catholic, people who drink, people who don't drink, people in the Bridges Bushwick area, all of the kind of like intersections of the types of people I wanted to bring into the bar, but also people who may have a problem with, the kind of religious iconography in there, and like had no pushback, basically.
No problem.
People were excited about the name. They're like, oh, I love that. Oh, that's memorable. Oh, that's
that's what I was going to say. It's very memorable. And as one of our Jeff and my clients is a scientific company, but the logo is an octopus, like like all these arms with like, and I was like, everybody who's like, oh yeah, who I talk to is like, oh yeah, we work with this company. And they say, oh yeah, that's the one with the octopus. And I'm like, this is so important to have. Well, it's so valuable. I don't know if it's like necessary, but it's really valuable to have that memorability. You want people to sort of associate with something. And yeah, I definitely think you picked a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's something that's specific to New York. Like, I don't know if Bar Nun would do well in Texas, for example. I lived there for a number of years. Maybe Bar Nun NONE would work fine, but not here. And I think it lends itself to being like, it's non-alcoholic, it's
yes.
And Bar None itself also has meaning too, of meaning without exception. And one other consideration for me was this neighborhood, the neighborhood that I would like to open in is Ridgewood. And this neighborhood is predominantly Catholic. In fact, we're on the border of the cemetery belt of New York. So it kind of has a historical context too. If you walk around this neighborhood, you will run into many churches. And so like, I kind of want to celebrate that. I'm not trying to make fun of it in any way. I'm celebrating that. And I even went as far as talking to a priest about it, and a nun in the Bronx had a phone call with a nun and talked to them about it. And like, tried to get their opinions and trying to just like figure out ways that my space will be respectful and interesting. The theme of the design will ideally be like a medieval Gothic churchy. So I'm not going to bring a lot of direct crosses and iconography into the space, but it's going to have those vibes. Like if I can have like stained glass or certain types of lighting, etc., that's what I'm going for. So.
It's interesting to me too, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about like there's long been this connection between like religious imagery and beer, wine. I mean, there's definitely there's definitely brands that are like connected, either in some cases because they were made originally by Franciscan monks. So it's just interesting like bringing that connection, but bring it in a different way because it's it's non-alcoholic and so forth. I think it's fascinating. I would love to. I mean, obviously, I get sort of the connection that you had with this idea, but I'd love to hear you. Our episode is called "Getting It Right: The Importance of Doing Your Homework When Starting a Business," and so I'd love to hear a little bit like what you talked a little bit of some of the research you did, but what is the homework that you are as you're trying to do this? What are the biggest sort of homework?
Jeff, that was my question. So.
Sorry, you're out of luck.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey. So given that I don't have a background in food and beverage, it's been a lot of, networking in the industry, talking to people who are already doing this. Some of the first things I did was go and talk to that non-alc bar, and that owner sat down with me and we had a great conversation. She's been so supportive. I've also spoken to bar owners of regular bars. And then I got involved in different sober groups in New York. I attended probably 50 plus events that were all around like nightlife, that were sober events, whether it was like a comedy show, a dance night, whatever. And they were held by different people in the city. So some people were influencers that do like pop-ups. Some were the brands, the non-alc brands that were sponsoring these things, etc. So I really took that opportunity to go to these events as a form of market research, essentially competitive intelligence, trying to see, okay, if people are having events, if they're, coming to these events, why is it? What is it that they're looking for? Where are the gaps? And I took every opportunity that I talked to someone as a form of market research and taking mental notes of like hearing their story. What is it that's motivating them to come to this place? And then, of course, I pitched my idea to many people. I mean, I know some people are a little afraid of pitching their business idea. Oh, someone's going to steal it. I'm like, it's opening a bar is not like a highly profitable, scalable, like it's a very niche thing. So I was just not concerned about
Yeah,
that.
I always talk about is it more like a hardware store or is it more like Facebook? Because Facebook there can only be one. In hardware stores, you can have like Home Depot next to the local hardware store, and both can actually survive. My question for you, Cullie, and I was similar. My first company, which has since no longer exists, but I also was not expecting to start a company when I started it. But I'm just curious for you, what are some of the surprises what are some of the surprise things that you're like, oh, yeah, I wasn't expecting to have to do that, or things that just are just kind of like unusual and outside of your comfort zone, if that doesn't, if there wasn't a surprise per se.
Do you mean in terms of starting a business?
Yeah, just starting
or
the
my
company.
research?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Honestly, when you're saying pushing out a comfort zone, it's like basically every day.
The whole thing.
I would say that if I had gone back to a full-time role at a company, I would not be growing as fast as I am here. I think one of the challenges is figuring out how to go from being an employee to being self-employed is such a mindset change. And I'm honestly still trying to work through that, trying to figure out how do I manage my schedule? What leads are worth chasing? All of that kind of stuff where, I've probably done a bunch of things that led to dead ends. And I've also made mistakes. And I'm also, but then you're juggling all of the different departments kind of. When you're in a job, you're kind of, okay, this is my lane and this is what I'm doing. And you know what the priorities are.
I used to say when I was started, I first started consulting, and then I started my company, whatever. But you're absolutely right. It's like the most learning you do of anything, because you're learning, you're having to do so many things. You're having to do stuff that's new, and when you're stuck. I'm betraying my attitude towards like corporate, but when you're stuck in a corporate job, you're kind of not only pigeonholed by the role that you're in, but also by the particulars of the company that you're in, and it's just very different when you're on your own.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I actually have a question. The category one, Cullie, the non-alcoholic entertainment and lifestyle and socializing is very much on the rise, and used to be that social life and alcohol are one of the same, and now there's a category breaking out, like all the CDC and WHO statements on the effect of alcohol. Did you research that as well, or that just kind of was in parallel? Or were you like, hey, listen, my passion happens to be the World Health Organization passion. So how did that part work? And Jeff, sorry, I talked over you.
No worries. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that, coming from a health, 5 years in health tech, my parents are both doctors, just having been in that space. And what was so ironic to me was how unhealthy our healthcare system was. I felt like a lot of the healthcare everybody's doing great work. Providers are trying their best to help people, but there's such a focus on after people are sick and not so much on the prevention side. And I had the opportunity to work for a short time for Zenoti, which makes software in the wellness space, and help launch a fitness software product. And that turned me on to a whole new space in health and wellness, where people are so focused on the prevention side. And so, I think like for me, part of it was trying to take pieces of that background and figure out, okay, like what can I do to help people make healthier choices and live a healthier lifestyle? So I'm pulling in all those pieces of my background. And I actually feel like by opening a non-alcoholic bar, I also want to offer vegetarian eats and then social experiences and events. I'm going to be doing more healthcare than I was working in healthcare.
Right.
It's such like a different thing to me.
Yeah, it's such a that's a fact. I just finished reading I can't remember the author's name. The guy that wrote The Black Swan. He also wrote this book called Anti-Fragile, and he talks about, he said the most impactful thing for solving cancer is to stop smoking, right? It's not like all the drugs, all the other stuff, whatever that you can take. So it's really an interesting thing of like, sometimes it's just thinking about it from the perspective of how do we eliminate the bad instead of adding some medication or whatever. So it's interesting. It's funny. The other day, this will be a little piece of research, positive research for you. So I was at an event the other day, and I was there with this guy that I know who's a wine guy. He's actually been on our podcast recently, and he. So I was talking to somebody about the wine guy. I was whatever, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know about that. Like, no, from what I hear, the young people aren't drinking wine anymore, or whatever." So definitely, sort of starting to get into the cultural sort of awareness of like,
Yeah.
Now I don't, it's always interesting how we sort of overblow. Like, I don't think it's that everybody's going to suddenly stop drinking alcohol forever, but it does seem like there must be something happening sort of in the cultural ethos or whatever of people moving away from alcohol. I think it's interesting. It's a very cool, point.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you're saying, I need to tie this to, because those people who don't want to drink still want to have fun. They still want to go out and whatever. I'd be really interested to hear it. So from in your sort of view of like, what is a night, an evening at the bar going to be like? Have you imagined that?
Let me just I'm happy to answer that question. Let me just I know that Elena asked a specific question and I didn't fully answer it, so I just want to answer her question. So just going back to, in terms of like researching the products, I have been doing a lot of that. I actually have an Excel sheet of hundreds of products that I've tasted. And it really started with going to Bar Convent Brooklyn, which is a trade show for alcoholic and non-alcoholic products. And I went and talked to vendors. There were 30 non-alc brands there. There were a number of brands doing low alc or non-alc as well, in addition to their alcoholic products. So I've done a lot of tastings, and then I've done so many calls with salespeople just to learn about the product, understand the ingredients, because I've had a lot of people coming to me and asking me, what are adaptogens? What is, CBD versus THC? Like, what are these other things that are being added? What's a functional beverage? So I want to educate myself so that I can understand what I'm going to be offering and make sure it's safe for the consumers. But then also, I've had clients hire me to work events and stuff, and I want to make sure I create a menu that's makes sense for their customers. And I will even go back even further and say, when I first started this journey, one of the first things I did was run a survey of people who live in the area. And it was just a small, I think I had around 50 respondents to the survey, very in depth about like their preferences in terms of drinks. What are they drinking now? And so I got some, tidbits in there of what people are drinking now. And that helped as like beginnings of, okay, like, what do I need to do research on? Where are the gaps? What are the products they don't know about? And then I've been, like I said, networking in the industry. Like, I just went to Mindful Drinking Fest in DC, and there were a number of other like non-alc bottle shop bar owners. And then there was also brands there where you could try. So yes. And I hope that kind of gives you an overview of a lot of that research. And then Jeff, you had asked about what makes a fun night out. Is that?
What is a bar going to look like? Like, what's going to make this a hot spot to be for?
I would say so. What I've noticed is a lot of the non-alc specific kind of spots are more going towards like the wellness route, where they're kind of a blend of a yoga studio, meditation, like more of that kind of thing, which is lovely. I love those experiences. but I want to feel more like a bar that you'd go into in Brooklyn. You know, it's got to feel like the area. It's got to feel like the vibe of young, edgy, kind of, you know, it should be like, it should have like dark and light, you know, kind of, which goes with a lot of like religious stuff too. There's always dark and light, you know?
Right.
So I kind of want that. I want it to feel like a bar with good music, good drinks, experiences. Ideally, when I do events, I want to have events that force some people to interact that normally wouldn't. And one of the things I'm exploring, which again, I haven't found a space yet, I'm looking, but is figuring out how architecturally we can design the space to cause some of those social interactions. You know, like whether I'm going to do medieval style, like long tables where people sit next to each other and it's not just everybody's in silos, or playing with what other bars are doing. For example, there's a bar that has rotary phones all around the place, and you pick one up and someone will answer somewhere else in the bar, or another bar that does where you can ask an anonymous question in a note and it'll be sent to someone, they'll respond and it comes back to you and you can get like, you know, like there's all different ways of forcing interaction. I want to explore ways to do that, because at the end of the day, my mission and vision really revolve around creating a non-alcoholic community. It's not going to be just a bar. So I ideally want to offer a membership eventually where people who are members can get access to special members only types of events. They can be part of that community. They can get special offers, things like that. And it's not, at the end of the day, just about it being in the bar. The bar idea came from figuring out, okay, like this is a way to support that community, having a central hub, having a space. And I can see this brand eventually becoming a lifestyle brand where maybe I have Bar Nun Work, where we have a co-working space, or, you know, there's other things involved. So I think at the end of the day, a fun night is really about finding ways to engage people in either like similar interests. It's also about creating some sort of mystery or some sort of like something that's like edgy and kind of curious, like why should people want to come back? And then also like having some sort of social interaction that really glues people, like makes them feel connected, and they're not just like, oh, I just went to see this one performer and I'm going home. Like, no, like if they met one or two people, did they have a good connection? Does that make them want to come back again? And maybe sometimes those interactions are just with the staff too. You don't know. I am actually taking a community building class right now. And so I'm really hoping to get some of those foundational elements and then be able to bring that to the bar once I eventually open. Yeah. So I'll probably have a better answer for you in like, I think class ends in 6 weeks.
All right.
Well, I was expecting you to say like axe throwing or something like that.
Hey, you know what? Like those are the things though,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Things that people
You
go out and
bond
they're
over
like, I
something.
went axe throwing. And you're like,
Yeah.
how was that?
Dude,
You know, like,
There was one.
I love axe throwing, as a matter of fact.
Really?
I went a couple times before the COVID pandemic hit, and it was definitely fun.
Well,
Jeff,
I feel like, you know, at some point we need to do our like annual, you know, trip down to visit Elena in New York, and we can all get to do some axe throwing. But before we do that,
or we could meet up Bar Nun.
yeah,
yes.
hopefully,
And then go some axe throwing. All good.
If we're gonna do axe throwing at Bar Nun, I hope that I hope it's actually sanctioned by Cullie.
So,
yeah, hopefully I have the insurance to cover that. I mean, I don't know if my insurance is gonna like that.
maybe Boston. So, all right. So, at this point in the show, we always like to have ChatGPT jump in and ask a few questions. I usually ask if you'd like absurd or thought-provoking first.
Absurd.
Okay. I think that's generally speaking. I don't know if anybody's ever picked thought-provoking first, but okay.
Well, it's like the dentist's 4 out of 5.
All right. Do you? I'm going to tweak this because it's acting as if you're already open. So I'm going to tweak it slightly. Like, do you think you will ever have to excommunicate someone for trying to spike the punch?
Wow. I think That
Yes.
would be not something I've thought about that could come up, but that is, I guess I'll have to think about that in my employee handbook when I'm putting together risks, potential risks. But you know what? Like, that's not, unfortunately, it's not a very uncommon thing of people. I mean, not specifically putting spiked alcohol, but
Right.
I'm saying like people
Oh,
drugging,
yeah.
putting
Right.
stuff in drinks.
Yes,
Because
that's
yeah.
not cool. Not cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you all have seen, there's videos on social media. There's this one woman in New York who would go out with her friends to parties, events, whatever, and she would take those pixie dust sticks, you know, like the candied dust,
Yeah, and dump them
and
in
she
people's
would
drinks.
dump them in people's drinks when they weren't looking. And the videos are so funny because there's like everybody's drinks get spiked. It's like it's so hard to always be watching your drink. You just can't. And there's a lot of people that had no idea that their drink was spiked. So, and it's very common. I've had friends who unfortunately
Scary.
were affected by it. So yeah, it's that I would say that's a pretty strong reason to excommunicate. I love that word.
Yeah, I don't think ChatGPT was going quite as dark, but you're absolutely right.
All right, here's the thought-provoking one, I guess. I don't know, it's kind of goofy too, but what's your secret? What do you think, what's the secret to making a non-alcoholic bar the hottest spot in town? Divine intervention or just really good mocktails?
Both.
So do you so that's actually, but while we're on that question, like, do you have plans for like signature drinks? Like, is that sort of part of you, in addition to like the alcohol that you're bringing in, do you have sort of signature cocktails and that kind of thing that you're thinking, or mocktail?
Yeah, so it's all going to be non-alcoholic, but I'm, so there's certain categories. There's like de-alcoholized drinks, so you'll see like beer, wine, etc. But then I'm also doing like adaptogenic. I'm exploring whether I'm going to offer like CBD drinks, kombucha.
What is adaptogenic, by the way? I haven't heard that term.
Yeah, so adaptogenic basically is there's certain beverages that will have maybe ingredients you've heard, like ashwagandha mushrooms, like reishi mushrooms, those kinds of things. The idea of adaptogens is that they help balance, bring you back to balance, and they help with regulating stress. And there's a lot of brands now exploring adding these kinds of ingredients, botanical ingredients or functional ingredients that help with, whatever it is. In this case, adaptogens is really just about regulating stress, but then there's things like nootropics, which helps with energy and focus, and there's so many other categories of functional ingredients. And that is, I think, what a lot of, especially since we mentioned the younger generation not drinking alcohol as much, that's what more people are looking at, is like, how can I get a benefit out of this drink? Now, one thing to say is I'm not in any way endorsing any specific use of these products. I'm basically just looking at what the market demand is, what the interest is. And, at the end of the day, people still have to follow their doctor's orders and kind of like what their body says and all of those things. But, and a lot of the dosages in these drinks are really low. So it's not going to have a profound impact on you unless you're doing it regularly and that kind of thing. But it's still interesting. Like it's a new emerging market. There's a lot of R&D going into it and a lot of great products coming out of that too. So it's something that, if you're interested in, we can talk later afterwards about it. And yeah.
So the other thing I'm just like, you have not mentioned kombucha yet. And I love
I think I just did. I think I might have just said it, but yeah, kombucha is definitely another category that's of interest. Okay. So
awesome. I just missed it because I was probably focused so much on trying to hear kombucha, and I was
you were focused on adaptogens, and I said,
well, yeah, right. That's right. Because I was like, what is an adaptogen? And you probably said it right after that, and I just missed it. So kombucha is on the list. That's good because I'm a big fan.
There's a specific brand that I would love to carry, Unified Ferments, which is based here out of Brooklyn, and their kombuchas are really interesting because they take teas from around the world, and it's not just the typical, like, a lot of kombuchas just use black tea. these guys do all different types of teas. So they even have kombucha that's non-caffeinated. All of them are, you know, very low alcohol, so they can call themselves non-alcoholic. Technically, non-alcoholic means below 0.5% alcohol. That's what's legally considered non-alcoholic in the US. And so, yeah, they're a brand that if you're into kombucha, you should look at them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool.
Did you?
No.
So I also wanted to mention, Eric, by the way, your question about in the beginning, what other things did I not expect as a founder? I'd say two things. I want to mention two things.
Yeah.
One is the amount of scammy stuff that I get now.
Oh, yeah.
This is a forewarning for all entrepreneurs out there.
Yep.
Like I have gotten stuff that looks like it's from the IRS.
Yep. We got that right away.
Things that look very legitimate. I also had gotten a very legitimate looking Eventbrite webpage because I was doing events on Eventbrite, and I got an email from them that said I needed to log in and blah, blah. And the webpage looked like a legitimate webpage. And at some point they got my credit card information off of Eventbrite. I had to change my card. But because I was running ads with Eventbrite, and the only way I figured it out was I went on that page and I saw it said .au, and I was like, "Is this an Australian company?" Like,
yeah.
So
no, that was the first thing when Jeff and I incorporated Twinning Edge, our company. The first mail I got was the you need to register with blah blah blah, and it's all garbage. Like it's just, you know,
it's really confusing because you're also getting legitimate stuff from the IRS when you're signing up for your tax ID and all this kind of stuff. So that's like, be careful as a founder. There's a lot of scamming. I've also, I was legitimately applying to a job with a non-alc brand, and someone from using that same brand's name at gmail.com, that same week that I had been like applying and talking to the recruiter, sent me an opportunity that was like they wanted to hire me as an influencer, and all of the exchanges seemed very legitimate. And then I got the contract and I was like, wait, this looks weird.
Well, I got one just this morning that I have somebody had mentioned me as a really interesting person to have a ghost written about me, and I'm like, yeah, right. Sure. And actually it's funny because a friend of mine said they like were complaining they had just gotten this same email, and it's like we can't have nice things because there's always somebody out there, and it's really kind of unfortunate. But yeah, that's one of the hats as an entrepreneur. You have to be scam detector.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention was that when I had the idea, I got a lot of pushback from family and friends. In fact, I still get pushback from family and friends. And so I would say to a lot of entrepreneurial or people who are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur is don't let that stop you if you know your idea is legitimate. Like I've done a lot of research. I've gone to the library and looked at all this demographic information. I've gone through surveys and market reports. I've talked to hundreds of people at this point, and many of them are like, "Where's your place? Can I come?" And I'm like, "It's not open yet." You know, like I've at this point legitimized my idea enough to know that it's a good idea.
If everybody you talk to or said this is crazy, whatever, then maybe you have to think about it. But you're absolutely right. There's always somebody. It is very easy to pick holes in anybody's idea. That doesn't mean there's not an idea there. It may be worth listening to them because you can adjust or whatever. But yeah, having gone through now, this is I guess technically my third company, but I'm counting my consulting company as a third one. But my second real, startup, and everybody has a theory as to why, or anybody can come up with a theory as to why it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I will also say since I told you about that idea when there was one non-alc bar, 5 more have opened since then. So I'm like, I know this is a legitimate idea now.
Oh yeah,
but. Sure. I'm cautious because, of course, the execution of the idea is so profoundly important to how successful it will be. And one of the things I'm trying to understand right now is the demand in my specific area. Being a brick and mortar, location is so important. And so that's, I've been trying to do some pop-up events and things in this area just to get an idea of that. That's kind of like the next.
I'm really curious, like, obviously somebody who might be interested in your bar might be going out with people who are more, just happy to go to the alcohol serving bar or whatever. How have you thought about, like, how do you attract the sort of mixed group like that in a way that, obviously serving alcohol isn't the right way to do that, but have you thought about that?
I think that if you have good ambience, good service, good drinks, people are really there for their friends and the vibes.
Exactly.
And I don't think if you're really interested in getting the feeling that you get from drinking alcohol, you're just not going to be at my place. And there's so many other awesome places in my neighborhood to do that. But I feel like most people will come to my place maybe once a week or twice a week and still go to
maybe
all
the second place they go to, right? I already had my drink. I don't want to go drink another alcohol drink. But I still want to keep hanging out. That guys, you might be the place to go. So.
And of the bar owners I've spoken to, the non-alc bar owners, all of them say that around 50% of the clientele do drink. Yeah. So it's just that they don't want to drink every day, or, or that they're going through a phase of their life where they're not drinking for whatever reason. There's hundreds of reasons why people don't drink. And so that's just like, it's nice to have that option to be in a slightly different environment. People, I don't have any problem with people choosing to drink. I just think that a lot of consumption is moving to more mindful consumption. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of the bars and restaurants are just not catering to this group, which is around 25 to 30% of people don't drink.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just looking at some stats for the UK, and I saw that the percentage of people that don't drink is greater than the percentage of vegans and vegetarians combined. And I'm assuming that it's similar stats in the US, but I don't know. And I'm just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. People don't.
And the social pressure to drink at an alcohol serving establishment is quite high. We are well over our half an hour. So as much as I'd love to keep continuing the conversation, we should probably wrap up. But before we go, we like to go around and ask everybody to give one thing to leave that they want to leave our audience with. I'm mean, so I always make the guest go first, and and then I get to go last because for whatever reason I've inherited this I've become the MC on this particular part of the episode. So, Cullie, what's one thing you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, gee, I was going to say, let the other people go first.
Yeah, but that's not part of the part of the fun of this is to watch the guests have to like think.
Well, I don't know.
Follow your dreams, even when you kind of said a good one, but No,
you know what? I would say, yeah, everybody always says follow your dreams. How many of us actually do that? Like, did you like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? I'm assuming something.
It was not what I am today.
Exactly. Okay. So we're all on the same page then.
I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't this.
Yeah, right. So I would say maybe one thing I would leave people with is it's okay to be uncomfortable and it's okay to not know the answers. And maybe this is just because I'm a woman. I've talked to a lot of female entrepreneurs who have, or I guess just like struggle with feeling like they need to know everything and want to be like the source of all. And there's help out there. There's a lot of great resources. If you're in New York City, the city itself offers a ton of help and resources. And there's also amazing people like you all that connect with other entrepreneurs or other people and can be a source of help and partnership. And so I would just say it's okay to be afraid. but don't let it stop you. And that's something
you said something about it being, maybe it's because you're a woman. I guarantee you every founder of either gender or any of the genders has had imposter syndrome numerous times every day that they've started. It may be that, some masculine energy thing not to admit it, but I will admit it for sure.
Well, before I do my one thing, Cullie, what is the best place for people to connect with you or reach out to you?
Yeah. So right now I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. I would say if you want to reach out and you have questions for me personally, LinkedIn's the best. And so just on there is Cullie Poseria. And then if you want to kind of follow my brand, I recommend following me on Instagram at barnun.life, BARNUN.LIFE.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to actually build off of what you were saying, and I'm going to take it to, I think it's okay. Not only is it okay to be scared, but to become, as an entrepreneur, to become much more comfortable with failure, because that's how we learn. And I think, to your point, like you said, you in the beginning of the episode, you said you've grown so much from this experience. And I would say likewise for me, in ways that I would never have expected if I had just stuck with a corporate role. And I think, I'm reading this book right now called The Right Kind of Wrong by Amy Edmondson. And she talks, and so there's a story in it where she talks about a little kid who's a chess player. And he says, I never lose. I never lose. I learn. I think that, it's like coming from like a 10-year-old. It's a really smart way of thinking about it. Is like, stuff's not going to work. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to go down the wrong avenue, but if you go down the wrong avenue, you learn that's not an avenue to go down next time and whatever. And so I think really powerful opportunity. I will pass it over to Elena.
Thank you. I would want to point out how much work, research, investigation, benchmarking goes into commercializing an offering way before it exists. So entrepreneurship does not start on the day when the doors open. It probably starts years before that. So that's like my takeaway. And I definitely applaud what you're doing in trying to get your offering off the ground, because it's pretty amazing that the amount of thinking and investigation and concepting that you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just try to make progress a little bit every day.
A little bit every day, yeah.
And it's I'm also trying to train myself not to be afraid to do the things. Because, for example, I had to push myself to send out my first survey. I had to push myself to do my first pop-up event, all of those things where you're like, I just need to be more ready. I just need to do a little bit more research. I need to talk to more people. And it's okay, after a point, you have to say, no, I just need to do it. I've done enough research.
Well, I always say with that is the thing that you're resisting the most is probably the thing you're most need to do next.
And accounting. Back to the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, accounting. Well, actually, the thing that drives me most nuts, and this kind of ties into my one thing, but is reading contracts and all the and I don't know how much you have to. I'm sure you have to do that. You're gonna have to do that with vendors and stuff like that. But and leases and whatever. But yeah, my one thing was just there's so many hats to be worn, and I really do think you have to see the interesting side of everything. You have to be, there are things that I don't like. I agree, but you kind of have to be okay, but there's value in them, and that there's and that those many hats actually will lead to learning and growth and whatever, as well as the things that you really like to do. So, Cullie, this was fantastic. I love what you're doing. I am really excited that, that Jeff, Elena, and I are going to meet up in your bar someday. So, you let us know when you're open, and then we'll
course.
plan around it so we can come visit. All right. So thank you so much. And we look forward to keep hearing more news.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cullie.
Bye.